Hi everybody, I'm Roy Firestone and this is our weekly show on Facebook and YouTube. This week's show is about failure and overcoming failure with persistence. It's a story that is going to inspire you. It's Ian Davis's story. Ian Davis is 47 years old. He was born and raised in Medford, Oregon, and you might understand it if he was angry and bitter, but he's not. Most recently, Ian and his family barely escaped injury or death when the wildfires forced them out of their home and nearly destroyed their property and business. Now, Ian is certainly grateful for that, but it's been a long litany of heartbreak and harrowing experiences for Ian. 4 years ago, Ian was diagnosed with a virulent form of blood cancer, multiple myeloma. He's undergone chemotherapy and transplants, and he tried to get back to work, but then at work, he suffered a freak injury to his left hand. And because of a bone infection related to the cancer, doctors told Ian they had to amputate his fingers one at a time, covering several weeks. Now here's the incredible twist of fate. When he was 17 years old, Ian entered a science project in his senior year in high school. His invention was a prosthetic robotic hand. Well, now 30 years later, Ian's partially amputated hand didn't qualify for insurance right away because, as Ian put it, fingers are considered a luxury and there's no coverage for amputated fingers. Well, Ian decided to fight for the insurance, but until he got a ruling, what would he do with his seemingly useless hand that was his lead left hand? Instead of wallowing in self-pity, Ian Davis remembered his science project nearly 30 years before. He decided he would invent the first ever robotic hand that didn't use plug-in electricity. It took him months of long hours, trials, failures, incremental progress, but Ian Davis did it, defying the sickness and the nausea and the weakness from treatment and the hardship he endured. He engineered this amazing robotic hand that uses a small battery but allows Ian complete control of his hand, which is actually, by the way, an upgrade in terms of speed and versatility to an industrial prosthetic hand. And what's more, Ian has recorded his progress on creating that robotic hand, posted it on YouTube. Suddenly he has over 400,000 subscribers, millions of views of his videos. He is making connections every day from all walks of life. Amputees, able-bodied people, they just want to talk to him, they want to hear his story, and what a story it is. Well, before we go, I'd like to say a few things about failure. The difference between average people and achieving people is their perception of and response to failure. Thomas Edison, by far one of the most famous inventors in history, he holds 1,093 patents to his name. However, when attempting to invent a commercially viable electric light bulb, he failed over 10,000 times. When asked by a reporter how it felt to fail so many times, he said, "I haven't failed 10,000 times. I haven't failed once. I've succeeded in proving that those 10,000 ways will not work. And when I've eliminated the ways that won't work, I'll find the way that will work." Or Ellen Eglin. She made her living as a housekeeper and a government clerk. In the 1800s, she invented a special type of clothes wringer, which was a machine that had two rollers and a frame that was connected to a crank. The invention came at a time when there was not a lot of ways to wash clothes other than with your hands. Ellen realized that there had to be a better way to wring the water out of clothes, so she put her mind to it and came up with something that revolutionized the very necessary act of washing clothes. It was the first forerunner of the washing machine. Eglin decided to sell her patent to a white person interested in manufacturing the product. Eglin was quoted as saying, "I am black, and if it was known that a Negro woman patented the invention, white ladies wouldn't buy the wringer." But she kept her spirit and her love of the invention. She made history, she changed the world, and she was undaunted. Bill Gates, worth more than $80 billion, he's the father of modern personal computing software. He brought us operating systems, Microsoft EOS and Windows, along with Microsoft Office Word, Excel, PowerPoint. But at the age of 17 years old, his first software company called TrafoData, which analyzed raw traffic logs, it failed. But he didn't quit. Or Albert Einstein, one of the greatest thinkers of our time, didn't speak till he was 4 years old. His family considered institutionalizing him as mentally deficient. He also failed his entrance exam to the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School located in Zurich at 16 years old. Even his father, up until the time his father died, considered Albert Einstein to be a major failure. After eventually graduating from college, Einstein actually worked as an insurance salesman, and he failed at that as well, but he didn't give up. Henry Ford, the father of the automobile, quite possibly one of the most famous industrialists to have ever lived, he helped bring transportation to the masses in America. He subsequently did it for the rest of the world too, but his start was far from noteworthy. His first company went bankrupt. His second company also went south when, after a dispute with partners, he was forced to walk away with only the rights to his name. But he didn't abandon his dream. Soichiro Honda, the late founder of the Honda Motor Company, dealt with an enormous amount of failure. In 1937, at the time of the Great Depression, Honda founded a company in an attempt to create piston rings for Toyota. He failed, having to pawn his wife's wedding ring just to stay afloat. His first factory bombed out during World War II. His second factory destroyed a short time after an earthquake. But he famously said, "Success represent 1% of your work, which results from 99% of your failure." He didn't give up. So, Ian Davis. He may never be quite as accomplished as Edison or Gates or Eglin or Honda or Ford or Einstein. But he's got one thing in common with all of them. He refused to allow hardship and heartbreak and personal tragedy to set him back. He insisted on finding his success, and he did it with a quiet courage and persistence and perseverance in spite of life's cruelest hardships. That's our show. We'll see you next week.